Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Christina Stidham, Digital Content Director at Women in Retail Leadership Circle. Today I'm joined by Avni Modi Sarkar, co-founder and chief creative thinker of Modi Toys, a children's toys and books brand rooted in Hindu faith and South Asian culture. In this episode, we're discussing the company's mission, how Avni made the jump from her corporate job to founding Modi Toys, her initiative to mentor other entrepreneurs, and much more. So Avni, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Christina.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So first, tell me about the inspiration behind launching Modi Toys and the brand's mission.
Yeah, absolutely. So the birth of Modi Toys really came from the birth of my daughter and my niece 4 years ago. So my brother and I, although we are 6 years apart, we actually entered parenthood at the same exact time because my daughter and his daughter were born exactly a week apart. And as a result, we were going through all of these life-changing experiences together. And we realized that we were starting to look for the types of toys and books that we wish we could give our daughters, but were not readily available in the market. And specifically, what I mean by the types of books we were looking for is toys that represented our background in terms of our religious diversity, not just in terms of our race or ethnicity, because toys like those are in abundance. But when we went to go look for toys that helped introduce our children to their South Asian culture and Hindu faith, we realized that nothing like this actually existed. And we obviously had no plans or desire to become entrepreneurs or add that to our resume. Shortly after becoming mom and dad, we realized that the need for something like this is far greater than our lack of experience in this space. And so we set out to fill the market gap when we realized that nothing like this really existed.
Yeah, you certainly don't see many cultural items among the thousands of Barbies and hot rod toys around the Toys R Us and all these other places. Speaking of that and your mission to make sure people are exposed to Hindu faith, Indian culture, South Asian culture, how do you hope that Modi Toys and Books can impact this next generation of children, and as well as their parents or families purchasing these products?
Yeah, the great thing about our product, and I think as me and my brother and I being really the co-founders behind it, is that not only are we the creators of our toys and books, but we are also the consumers. And we understand our target market because we are the target market. I not only are we children of immigrants, but my brother and I were actually immigrants ourselves. So we're actually raising first generation Indian American children, and we're kind of navigating this space and kind of figuring it out as we go. Our parents had it very different when they were raising us. It was very easy for them, at least to me it seems that way. We grew up speaking our mother tongue. We grew up eating like Indian ethnic food every day. We grew up watching Indian, soap operas and movies on TV. Like we were just fully immersed in our culture that it never really dawned on us that like we were living these dual identities until we became parents ourselves, and we realized how much had changed in a single generation. Where now my daughter's primary language really is English, both inside and outside the home, where she lives off of peanut butter jelly sandwiches and pasta every day. And where she watches Coco Melon on YouTube. So in a single generation, so much has changed, and I think we were starting to worry that we weren't doing enough as parents to ensure that our children were growing up with a sense of connection and a sense of appreciation to their Indian roots and their Hindu faith. And really, what we're hoping that our toys allow parents to do is to introduce and expose their kids to these things in a really simple and a subtle manner. We don't want to shove religion down anyone's throat. That's not really the way to go about it. And, we understand that at a basic level, music and repetition are a great aid when combined in teaching kids. And so the great thing about our plush toys is that they're actually musical. So when you squeeze their belly, they sing the mantra or the prayer respective to that Hindu deity. So just sort of as a side note, many people are familiar with Greek mythology. So how there's like Zeus and like Venus, the goddess of love. Like every god and goddess represents some sort of a trait. Very similarly, in Hindu mythology, there are multiple gods and goddesses, and each of them also represent some trait. Like so, of the three toys that we currently have in our collection, baby Ganesh, he represents um, hope and good fortune, whereas Hanuman represents strength and energy, and Krishna represents love and friendship. And these are not traits, we assign them. This is just part of Hindu mythology, and just the fact that now parents are able to kind of erase that boundary between putting religion on such a high pendulum that you can't really touch it, like you have to revere it. And now we've made it more approachable, where like God is your friend. Like you can learn about your religion and your faith and spirituality in a really friendly manner, and it doesn't have to be this thing where you only speak to God when you go to the temple like every weekend or for like some major religious holiday. And we're trying to introduce and help kids stay connected to their roots and their faith in a manner that we think is really feasible in today's day and age, because we realize that every parent is busy. They have a full-time job, or they have a side hustle, and they don't want to necessarily be cumbered down by taking time aside to take them to a class, or sit down alongside with them for like a Zoom class, or take them to a temple like every other weekend. Like this allows them to bring toys that are educational as well as entertaining, and ultimately we try to design them in a manner that we would like to present them to our own kids.
Such great points. And yeah, it's exposing these kids at a young age to a very friendly, fun, cute little toy that has a deeper meaning behind it.
Mhm.
And yeah, they are really cute. And I can imagine that the families get a lot out of this too. I read a review on your website that a parent had gifted their child one of your, I think, baby Krishna plushes.
Mhm.
And their grandparents visited from India, and they were just blown away, like so happy that their grandchild was able to have this every day to play with and hear the songs.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this on a really irregular basis now, and it really brings me such joy that, something that was really intended for children to learn, not only is it really impressing children, but really their parents and even the grandparents as well. I mean, I get so many times I hear parents telling me like, I knew these mantras when I was younger, but I forgot about them, or, oh, I didn't know this mantra. And they're kind of learning right alongside with your children. And again, because they're really meant to be short and repetitive, you pick them up just as you would pick up any other nursery rhyme that you heard like nonstop. And grandparents, obviously they know these by heart, so when they see their not just their grandchildren but even their grown children reciting these, and I think it really just fills their heart, because it's like, okay, I've done something right, even though like I have not done anything. Like they feel like, okay, all of my efforts in trying to raise my own kids and ensuring that they have a sense of connection to their roots, it's being passed on, it's being preserved for the following generation. And really that's where part of the inspiration actually came from for my brother and myself, because when we saw our own mom interacting with our daughters when they were born, this is how we would see her interacting. Instead of her singing like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, she would be singing the mantras to our daughters. And I think we just wanted to find a way to sort of bottle up the essence of her and like my dad. I mean, they're both fairly religious, and we thought that one day, like they're long gone, like what are we going to have to remember them by? And this is one of the things that they really invested in us and in ensuring that we grew up with these types of values, and we didn't want to lose sight of that. We realized that obviously our kids are not going to be as religious as as my parents were, and that's okay. But like, I still want to be able to retain the values behind it. So this toy, I think, does a great introductory job to it. And then, obviously, once they're grown up, I mean, kids obviously will make their own decisions, but this is like really to help ensure parents that they are at least doing their part in exposing them and really driving a sense of curiosity. I think which is like the best thing you can do in any child, get them to ask questions about why or who is this or why do we do that, and then kind of like let nature take its course.
Yes, and even on like the most foundational level, just connecting to their culture and their roots, it's so
Mhm.
important. So let's talk about your background. Did you have any retail experience prior to founding Modi Toys? And what was your process like when you created these first few products to establish the brand?
Yeah, I wish I had retail experience. I wish my last name was Mattel or Hasbro instead of Modi, but here we are. No, so my brother comes from a consulting background. I come from a B2B marketing background. So we both work, corporate jobs for like over 15 years. And it really wasn't until, the idea for Modi Toys came to us, for Baby Ganesh came to us, that we became entrepreneurs and we kind of had to become experts in D2C and e-commerce marketing. The process in the early days was very, very rudimentary. So because just given our respective backgrounds in our careers, we assumed our responsibilities very naturally. So Viral, my brother, he took on the role of just being in charge of operations side of the business, and I took on the role of being in charge of the marketing side of the business. And both of us are, heavily involved in the product development aspect of the business. And early on, he really was the one going and speaking to manufacturers and just trying to get someone to create a prototype for our product based on a sketch that we had created of Baby Ganesh. At the time, we didn't really have a product name for it. And then once a prototype was created by a manufacturer based here in the US, that's when I really stepped into, my expertise, which was to figure out if we are actually filling a market gap, if there was a product market fit. And I joined as many Facebook mommy groups all around the world as Facebook would allow me to, just really to get market research insight. We didn't have any fancy like focus groups or anything, but this was really just my way of making sure that my brother and I weren't like living in a bubble and thinking that we had come with the greatest thing since sliced of bread, and that we were actually meeting the needs of other parents like us around the world. And thankfully, as it turns out, based on the overwhelming comments we received, I mean, there were some groups where there were like heated like debates going on. In terms of the comments we were receiving on our post, but the majority of the response we got was very, very encouraging, and that's what gave us really the confidence to move forward in producing our first batch of products. So I think it was really just a mixture of him working with the manufacturer to get the prototype to what it is today, because it was very close to our final production, and me making sure that we actually had a robust wait list, so that when we did launch, we actually did not have to work too hard to like sell out of our inventory. And it worked out, because when we finally launched in August 2018, we sold out in a matter of months, and something that we thought would take us 6 months, it took us less than a month.
Wow, yeah, that is a great point to have the pre-orders lined up. I think that's really good advice for anybody who's launching a collection for the first time. And you mentioned that you have a lot of experience in marketing, and you said that you fill that role pretty seamlessly at Modi Toys, and your brother kind of takes the operational aspects. What does your digital marketing strategy look like at the brand right now?
So I actually was not familiar with the a social media space at all. Like, I mean, I barely use it socially. I mean, personally myself. So when I had to step into the role and start using it for our business, I had to not just learn the ropes of how to even use Instagram, but really had to, discover who the right people to connect with are. Who are the right influencers, the right bloggers, other small businesses that I could learn from. I learned on the job, I think, as you do with any other job in that sense. And we didn't actually engage in any paid social media or even any paid digital advertising until at least a year and a half into our business. Because up until that point, really my focus was on building credibility, really by gaining word of mouth traction. I knew, again, just kind of putting myself in the consumer shoes, who do I trust when it comes to purchasing products, especially now as a first time mom at the time. Am I purchasing something because an influencer told me to, because a blogger told me to, or is it because, a friend of mine or a friend of a friend who just had a baby, or because like I saw it's on a Facebook mommy group. So, I had to, I think, kind of rely on my own maternal instincts to guide some of my decisions early on. And really my focus was on building a community just based on word of mouth, as opposed to worrying about like press coverage or getting like some big time like celebrity to endorse us. Because when you have 100 followers, like none of that really matters. It's really about, is like the neighbor next door that and you trust, who like that your kids have a play date with, like are they playing with the toy that you want your kids to also play with. Like, so in the early days it was really just about building word of mouth, and luckily, because of the wait list I had built from joining all those Facebook mommy groups, we had actually gained a lot of traction just that way. And then eventually, over time, I did start relying on paid advertising through Google, through social media, and that's really helped us scale our business. But what I keep going back to, and my advice to many other entrepreneurs in the space as well, is always to just focus on building a community. That's going to be ultimately, they're going to give you more credibility ultimately than I think anything else can possibly give you. Because when you have a win, you want to make sure that they're cheering you on. When you experience a loss, like you want to make sure that they're there to keep you stay afloat. Because ultimately you want to have a strong retention rate, but given the business that we're in, like we're not a consumable product, we also have to just focus on customer acquisition all the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so many women have these side hustles and ideas going on alongside their 9 to 5 jobs. The same thing that you experienced when you were working in marketing and had this idea to start Modi Toys. So how did you build up the courage to leave your job and focus full time on Modi Toys? And how can other women make the jump?
Well, I will say that it didn't take a lot of courage, because I did not make the decision to leave. The choices were made for me. I worked in corporate travel as my previous position. And as a result of COVID, obviously corporate travel took a big hit. It was one of those industries that was deeply impacted. And I was actually on maternity leave when all of this was happening. My daughter was born in March of 2020, to give you an idea of timing. So I was laid off later that year in 2020. So, that's when I made the decision that, rather than me join millions of other unemployed Americans and kind of fall back into this rhythm of like having a full-time job and a side time hustle, why not just focus on Modi Toys? Because by this point we had been in business for 2 years. We had seen growth year over year. And it was just, I think it was maybe the push that I needed to finally take a bet on myself. But I had been trying to juggle this, and I realized that I wasn't able to give it the time and attention that I needed to really, really scale. And I can tell you, Christina, that in just the past, gosh, I think it's been over 6 months now. Yeah, it's been like close to 8, 9 months now. that I've been in this position full time, I can see the change in the growth of our business. And obviously, I'm not saying it's all attributed to me going full time, but it's many factors, right? I mean, I'm able to like just think. I'm able to give myself the time to think more strategically as opposed to just being reactive all the time. I'm able to, you know, even now outsource help as opposed to like just doing everything on my own. Like now, even though I have technically more time to give the business, I realize that there are there are ways I should really divide and conquer the things that I'm focused on. Like there are ways to really better allocate my time and have someone else who perhaps has the time or the expertise to focus on other aspects of my role. And I would say that anyone who's currently, debating whether or not they should like take a bet on themselves or make the leap into focusing on their business full time. I think there are a lot of questions to consider, and this is the part I think that sometimes gets glossed over because in order for you to take a bet on yourself, like you have to have a lot of support on the back end. And what I mean by that is, if you are a mom, do you have childcare in place? Whether that comes in the form of a nanny, of daycare, of school, of grandparents, what have you. Like, what does that look like? That was a big factor for me because not only am I a mom of two kids, but I also have one on the way now very, very soon. So that's something that I'm constantly having to, kind of figure out. And I'm trying to avoid using the word balance because there's no such thing as work-life balance. I think it's more about an integration of the two. The second thing, of course, is, are you or are you not going to be drawing a salary from your business? And if not, how does this lack of compensation or the salary cut essentially you'd be taking if you're no longer working your full-time job, how is that going to impact your family's finances? If you are married, is your spouse income able to cover, for the two of you for maybe a set period of time? These are conversations that obviously you need to have with not just your business partner if you have one, which in my case is my brother, but also your spouse. So I think it's things like these that sometimes get glossed over, and people try to make entrepreneurship sound very glamorous, like yes, take a bet on yourself and like go for it, and you're gonna regret if you don't do it. But these are really the real questions that you should be asking yourself as well, in terms of how a single decision can really impact your life personally too.
So basically, you need to be prepared before you make the jump, but have faith in yourself, but have a plan.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you talked about being a working mom. So that was one of my other questions. I'm going to jump to that. We know being a working mom is a challenge. This past year has been no different, as possibly even more difficult. And congratulations on having another baby on the way.
Thank you.
How do you stay energized and focused on building the Modi Toys brand, with so much happening at home? And do you actually find that your kids help you create new product ideas since you're working in the children's toys space?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the second part of the question first. So yeah, obviously, our first product, Baby Ganesh, came directly as a result of my brother and I becoming parents, and that one product led to Baby Hanuman and Baby Krishna just very naturally, just because, as I was alluding to earlier, that there are many gods and goddesses within Hindu mythology that really, like the number of extensions we can create is sort of limitless, but eventually we will come to an end, I think. But a great example of two products that were inspired by our children were really the two that are releasing later this year. So one is the Cribmobile. It's a musical Cribmobile, and that idea came to us when I found out that I was expecting my second daughter last year, and my brother and I, we were thinking about, we were always brainstorming, but he saw that I sometimes like tend to like sing to my daughter if I'm like putting her to bed, or like, and all the like what I'll sing to her are one of the mantras. That's like my personal favorite, and like that's how we kind of got the idea of like, well, what if you could take this, like essentially what you sing to her, but put it like in a music box, you know, and let that kind of be her sleep aid. And obviously, you know, a crib mobile already exists. So I think our you know, the way we kind of come with these ideas is not so much reinventing the wheel, but it's more so how can we infuse our culture and our faith in existing products and just make them more of an inspired by you know, things that matter to us. So the musical cribmobile that we're coming out with, it's just like any other cribmobile, except what really makes it unique is that the music it plays, it's all instrumental. However, it's all instrumentals of Hindu hymns, prayers, um, just like devotional songs that are very, very popular. It looks like any parent, I think, will instantly recognize it. And it's very, very soothing. Like it's something that like even adults would actually enjoy, like long after their kids are asleep. I think they would want to leave it on and just listen to it for themselves. And the great thing about the musical cribmobile is that, you know, obviously cribmobiles are only recommended for use until like age of like, you know, 5 to 6 months, because once the baby is able to sit up in their crib by themselves, pediatricians recommend that you remove them. So we've actually made them modular so that the mobile piece can be removed. However, the music box can still, you know, stay with you. You can take it on the go in your stroller, car seat, backpack, diaper bag, what have you, so that it's really meant to like grow with you as your child grows. And the second product that was inspired by my daughter and my niece is the book that we're coming out with later this year called Desi Babies, South Asian Women of Wonder from A to Z. And this book features 26 women from past and present, all from the South Asian diaspora. And the reason why I want to write this book is because I was, of course, you know, searching to buy a book just like this. And this is how like a lot of our ideas come from. Like we don't set out to, you know, create products. We would much rather just take the easy route out and just buy them if they're available. But when I went to go search for them, there was nothing out there. And there were many, you know, A to Z books featuring women, and many of the books have maybe a couple of South Asian women mentioned in them, but there's not a single children's book for, I would say, you know, the ages of my daughter at the time, it's 3 and up, that featured an entire book of just South Asian women. And it was really important for me as a mom of, you know, 2 girls to show them these types of examples from early on, like show women who are really accomplished across all fields, whether it's entertainment or medicine or you know, legal, what have you. Like I want to just make them aware that that, you know, women who look just like you have become so much more than just the princess that you aspire to be right now. And I think again, it kind of goes back to what my brother and I were saying when our daughters were first born, that it's really important to start exposing them to these things from early on. Like there's no need for us to wait until they're like 5 or 6 years old at an age where we feel like they have the level of comprehension needed to truly understand. And we just want to start exposing them to people, to things that they're representative of their roots and their background. So yes, our children are always inspiring us to create the type of, you know, books or toys that we wish we could just readily buy. And in terms of how I stay energized and focused, I think you know, both successes and failures really drive me, and in both in very different ways. You know, anytime I have a win for the company, I want to have more of that. I want to experience that high again. You know, like we've been very fortunate to have a really great year this year, where we kicked it off by being featured on GMA. Then we were featured on Forbes Next 1000 list. We were recently featured on Entrepreneur. I mean, you know, all of these like wins, like I think help to get more wins, but it's what kind of fuels us to keep going, especially when the days are bad. You know, obviously the list of failures or the list of rejection is also just as long. But whenever we do face rejection, that also drives us just as more, because we know that a no is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of like redirecting us in the direction that's meant for us. And perhaps it's we're not talking to the right person if we get a no from someone. Maybe it's a matter of speaking to someone else in a different department, or maybe it's the timing is not right for us. Maybe we're not ready for that opportunity just yet, or maybe a better opportunity awaits us. So, I mean, I really try to look at both success and failures as as a driving force in what I do, and remaining focused is a little challenging, I think, with two little kids. But again, kind of goes back to my point of saying, making sure that you have the necessary childcare in place, because unfortunately, unlike being an entrepreneur, being a mom is not something that you can just kind of clock in and clock out. When your kids need you, like, you got to drop everything and you got to be by their side, and whether you got to have to take them to the doctor's office or they have a fever, you just have to give them that one-on-one quality time. So it just, having that support system, that village that everyone speaks of, I think is really important to helping you stay focused.
It takes a village, right? Definitely.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Have that support. And so lastly, I want to talk about this initiative that you started during COVID. Actually, you transitioned to this during COVID, where you started the Modi Toys mentorship calls to help other entrepreneurs. So I want to just tweak my question here a little bit. I just want to know, what's like the one key discussion that you seem to, and maybe it's recurring when you talk to these other entrepreneurs who are looking to you for advice on these calls. What is like a one key advice or topic that you could share with our listeners from these calls?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the reason why we started Modi Mentorship is because I noticed that, both my brother and I individually would receive questions from time to time from other South Asian small business entrepreneurs. And it'll always be like, hey, I just want to pick your brain for a little bit. Hey, I just have a quick question. Hey, I just want to ask you if you have a minute, to talk on the phone for like 15 minutes. And I figured that, there's a way to really structure this and make it more efficient, more so for us. And maybe there is, learning to be had if we can kind of gather all these individuals on a call together, and they can also learn from each other, because sometimes their questions were similar. And one of the questions that we tend to get often during these calls, or just one off, is around marketing, is around, how did you launch the product? How did you have a successful launch? And I tell them the story that, we kind of went through, that you want to make sure that, one, you are filling a true market gap. I don't think there is any single industry out there that's not saturated, to be honest, right? I mean, if you think about like clothing, skincare, beauty, toys, books, like, people have these things in their lives already, but why do they need to now buy yet another new product that they've never heard of? So what is going to make you stand apart? So I try to, one, make sure that they understand that, like, are you actually filling a true market gap? And is there a product market fit? Like, so make sure that you do the legwork and doing a little bit of market research initially, before you make such a big investment and make that initial batch. And then if you have that much proof, social proof, that, okay, yes, like, people like seem to want it and they said that they would buy it, then you can think about the steps needed to actually launch your product. And that is, building out the wait list. Like, make sure that you actually have enough people on your wait list that by the time you are ready to launch, keep in mind that only a very, very small percentage of those people will actually convert. I mean, in my example, in my case, I think we had maybe close to 1,500 or so people sign up on our wait list, which seems like such like a minuscule number now. But again, only a small percentage of those people actually converted. However, it's not the wait list that ultimately drove the success. It was the word of mouth from those people that allowed us to sell out of our initial inventory. So but the word of mouth is going to come if people see enough value in what it is that you're providing them. If they're truly excited about what it is that you have to offer, they will naturally want to share that with other people. And it's not going to be because like some gimmick or like some discount or some promotion that you're running. It's ultimately going to come down because they are genuinely invested in your product emotionally. I think the timing also makes a huge difference. In our case, we were very fortunate that we launched when we launched. Again, this was not strategic by any means, but just the way the timing kind of worked out with our manufacturer, that by the time we launched in August of 2018, that was right at the cusp of the Indian holiday season kicking off. So, for like in the American culture, like the holiday season kind of kicks off like right around Thanksgiving. That's when people kind of go into like, gift shopping mode. In the Indian culture, it kicks off a little bit earlier, around, I would say, August, September timeframe, because that's when we have a sequence of holidays, starting with Raksha Bandhan, where, gift giving is a big element of the celebration. And then it's followed by Ganesh Chaturthi, which is the birth of Ganesh, which is the god, the plush deity that we were launching with at the time. And then there's followed by Diwali, which is kind of like a mixture of our Christmas and our New Year. So because we launch right in the midst of all of these celebrations, people are naturally always looking for, I think, novel ideas, like novel gift giving options, and ours just happened to check the box really perfectly. So the timing really helped us, and the fact that we had sort of an inbuilt wait list helped us, and the word of mouth helped us. So, those are, I think, all three critical factors in your launch. And then, the rest of things like, pricing, et cetera, like I won't go into, but, if you're priced at a point where it appeals to the masses, like it's just going to make it that much more easier of a sell, as opposed to it being, a premium product where then you have to cater to a very, different audience differently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's 3 really great pieces of advice for our listeners. So thank you so much for your time and for all of your insights today. Avni, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me, Christina. This was great.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcast for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.